Hey, good evening, everybody. This is Bishop Jay. Thank you once again for joining us for our TAB Talk Tuesdays. I believe tonight we have some really good content and information for you. We've been in a series just dealing with what it means to be a Black man in America. And tonight, I'm excited because we're going to converse with two police officers who are going to give us insight, understanding into the plight of the Black man who is actually a part of the system that some are actually the system that is being protested, and we want to get their insight, their understanding, how they feel. We want to dig into their reality as Black men who are operating in a dualistic role, both as a police officer and as a Black man in America. So let's bring our panel in tonight. And I want to introduce to us tonight, we have Jorge Bernardez, make sure I say that right, who is a sergeant in the police department here in Baltimore. And then we have Jermaine Montgomery, who is also a sergeant in the police department here in Baltimore. And joining us again is Twa Jackson, who is one of the leaders at the TAB. Jorge, let's start with you. We want to jump right into the fray tonight because I want to make sure that I honor your time as well as everybody else's. And then Jermaine, you can just jump right in, and we can explore where this conversation takes us. And then Twy is we're gonna kind of toss this back and forth throughout the evening. So tell me how you're feeling overall as a Black man in light of the George Floyd killing, which is kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, and the resulting protests as a police officer. Just give me an idea of where you are with that.
As far as his death, his murder, let's just call it what it is, I feel enraged, disgusted. I feel devalued by hatred. Um, as far as the protest is concerned, I actually I appreciate. Being a veteran, being able to allow people to express themselves is it's a beautiful thing. That's the foundation of this country. But yeah, it's worrisome. It's disgusting, and it just that's the gist of it. That's the gist of it. I'm sorry.
No, man, that's your heart. That's your heart, Jermaine. Where are you on it?
How much time we got? Yeah. So,
Go on, brother.
so,
Just go.
dude, I'm like beyond words at this point. Because the you know, the reason why I got into law enforcement was to kind of be that change agent that people always talk about.
Mm.
And to do something different, right? So, growing up in Baltimore, in witnessing police interactions, they always felt a little off. You know what I mean? Like you couldn't quite put your hand on it. Everyone's not bad, right? And so you don't want to paint everybody with a broad stroke. But like, you've had your own personal interactions, and they all, some of them just felt like, that, a little okay, So you can kind of characterize it or try to lump it into something, but now, man, I mean, seeing this guy on the ground for that amount of time and having his life taken away from him is just been it's been like Jorge said. I mean, I've gone through the entire spectrum of emotion, from rage, to tearing up, to like just wanting to when isolation. I've gone in my basement and I started hitting the heavy back because I've just been like angry, right? And so I've been trying to figure out ways to channel what energy I have left, to like, okay, well, what do I do, right? I got all this energy, I got all this rage, I got all, what do I do with this? because like it's just time out for talking about it. I mean, I'm not saying that we shouldn't talk about it. I'm talking about it right now, but what I am saying is that like people know, right? And then I think the more frustrating part is to go and talk to some of your coworkers and then hear
Years, yeah.
the false justification of this nonsense, right? And
Oh
so,
my
oh,
goodness.
well, it's a false narrative that black people are killed by the police, and I'm thinking to myself like, who is this guy, right? And why are you working here? Um, I think that's the more frustrating part of the job, and it's at those times where I have really, really, really kind of done some soul seeking, or soul searching, I should say, because I've just like, all right, is this what you want to do with the rest of your life? I'm not gonna lie, I've thought about it. Uh, do you want to be a part
Wow.
of like, dude? I mean, like when I tell you I've gone through the gamut, like it's yeah,
Let's
yeah.
not interjecting there, man. It's like it's funny how what you mentioned the word sensitive. So you become a lot more sensitive to certain things, and everything happens for a reason. Everything happens for a reason. Just like for example, you get a cut in your arm, and now you have stitches. Now you are more sensitive to how you maneuver, how you walk around, how you
Mm-hmm.
lift your arm. And in light of George Floyd's death, especially in law enforcement, and as a black man in law enforcement, it does make you more aware. It does make you want to, it opens your ear a little bit wider to hear what people are saying.
Mm-hmm.
And just like Jermaine just said, the things that you hear from your peers, the things trying to justify, some people, some law enforcement officers, and this is black, white, doesn't matter. They're too blue. They're
Mm-hmm.
just too blue, meaning they're just so police that everything has to be in favor of the police. Oh, he had drugs in the system. Oh, this, that, and the third. None of that is relevant. None of
Wait
that
till the
is
medical
relevant.
examiner report comes out.
Yeah,
Like does
exactly.
that matter?
Wait till the medical report comes. That is not relevant to the facts. No, to the facts. The fact is there was a knee on a neck, which is by definition of law enforcement training, it's a lethal move. It's a lethal move that has intentions, and that is not how we train. That is not at all how we train. So when I saw that, I remember the first time I saw it on social media, and I saw it for like a brief second. I grinched, and then I just kept swiping. I just kept swiping because I knew where that was going. I saw the wrong instantly. I saw the wrong instantly. That is not what we do. That is not what we do. That is not how we're trained to do. It doesn't matter which department it is across the nation. That is just not what we do. That is not what we do. I can broaden up the room and demonstrate how that could have been done, how it should have been done, and George Floyd would still be with us today. So how do you not see intention in that? Is beyond me. It is beyond
I
me.
got a quick, I got a quick question. I mean, based upon what you guys are saying, um, what percentage, or if you could kind of put a number around it, like what percentage of your colleagues do you feel like share that you know blue over everything
Too many,
methodology, or
too many percent.
I mean, well, the reason I asked the percentage is I think there is the idea that we either
Other
paint in
different.
broad strokes. So it's either all the police are bad, or people try to say, oh well, nah, the police aren't bad, But I think it, what percentage are we dealing with? Like, I mean, if this is a disease, which I would call it is, racism is a disease. Excessive use of force is a disease. What's the percentage of folks we're talking about here? I mean, do you feel like we at 50%? We at 65? We at 80?
Again, how
I
much
think I
time?
know. Right.
And,
While
okay,
it's
and
on
let
my
me,
mind, real quick.
we know you guys have to be careful. We know y'all have to be careful because
Yeah.
we don't know how many people are going to be privy to this particular
Oh, listen.
viewing. So we're just trying to get an idea. You ain't got to name names, but we just, your perspective of a percentage.
I'll give you an idea, and you can paint your own picture with it. So we have roll call every day. There's 3 shifts. There's roll call, and each roll call, at least in my entity, we have a minimum of 20 subordinates, 2 supervisors, and a superior supervisor. Okay, and in this room, in this roll call, during this process, we do share opinions about certain things, and the things that I've heard. And let me backtrack by saying I appreciate being a supervisor now. I appreciate being a leader. Okay, because now I have a platform to interject and change the mindset of the people who are coming up in law enforcement. So going back to what I was just saying, about 20 subordinates, 2 supervisors, and a superior to those 2 supervisors, and you can see the thought process of the juniors, the rookies. They're literally looking around and waiting to see what's the opinion of the people who have time on, the seasoned officers, so they could join the bandwagon. And then you have the seasoned officers who have, again, you have that is pretty much split between they're too blue, don't have an opinion, don't want to say nothing, which in my opinion, you don't say nothing. It's like you're allowing that voice of nonsense to have a louder voice because you're now not you're not contesting it, and you have rookie officers. So to put a percentage on it is kind of difficult, but it's funny you mentioned about percentage because just last night I was looking. It's on Quora.com. I literally Googled percentage of bad officers or bad police in the United States, and it says 10%. It says 10%. When this was a research that was done in 2016, it says 10%, and it might be even more as time goes on. But it's because of that. Officers are, especially the young officers, they are so easily influenced. So easily influenced. So going back to me saying I appreciate being in a leadership position now because I literally I stomp it. Whenever I hear something that is wrong, and it's not just a matter of my opinion. It's just a matter of for the greater good. It's not my opinion. It's for the greater good. I stomp it. I've heard things like, "Oh, that should have happened. That person got what they deserve." Wrong. Wrong. That's not what we're here for. So I kind of veered off a little bit, but it's hard to give a percentage only because people are easily influenced. Just like you said, it's a disease. It's either the antibodies are going to fight against it or they're going to be subdued and become a part of it. And there's so much going on right now. Social media is spreading news so much faster than the media that how do you determine that?
Um,
Jermaine?
let me try to answer that question a different way. Rather than giving you a specific percentage, because I know that's what you want to, because you ask specific questions. But
Yeah.
I'll give it to you a different way. Um, my belief is that police are a product of society, right? If we want better police, we need a better society, right? They come out of society. They are you want better police, have better parents, have better fathers, have better mothers, have better sisters, brothers, so on and so forth, right? Better schools, right? These are all things that we know that we need, and yet we don't fund them adequately enough. We don't support them enough. Um, and so what you get is the product that we have today. Are they all bad? I'm not gonna go out and say that 10, 20%. I don't know, right? I don't know enough about other departments, I can't say that I've spoken to the majority of my department to speak competently enough on giving you a defined percentage. But what I can say is that there are too many that allow um, certain thought processes to go forward, right? So I
Yes.
won't say, and because we're in this season right now where we are like ultra sensitive to things that we hear and things that we say, and rightfully so. What you may find, excuse me, what you may find is police, um, kind of how can I put this? Uh, Dodging um, certain conversations, I would say, that we need to have. Like these conversations that we're having right now, this needs to go on more with the community. Um,
Yeah.
because
Agree.
it's necessary for police and the community to see how we act, how we why we act the way that we do, and engage one another more, right? So that your kids can be safe, my kids can be safe, so on and so forth. Um, there's a lot of groupthink and this is to Jorge's point. There's a lot of groupthink in police, right? And I did a little bit of
Very much so.
research on this. There is so much like, hey, look, this guy says it's okay. Well, man, all right, let's go with it, right? And that's not because they're weak-minded individuals. I think it's just the culture and how you're kind of brought up. And I mean, you may find similar situations in the military because most police agencies are paramilitary organizations, right? And so, hey, look, they at the very beginning they break you down and they say, hey, look, you're not individuals anymore. We don't go out as individuals. We go out as teams. This is your brother beside you. You would give your life for your brother. You gotta ride with your brother. You gotta do all of these things as teams, as part of a team. And so it's difficult, not impossible, but it's difficult to now separate, hey, look, do I make this bad decision with my brother, or do I say, hey, whoa, wait a minute, I think my conscience is telling me that this is I'm not giving these officers a pass in Minneapolis. When you see something wrong, that's not what I'm suggesting. But I'm just trying to get you into the mindset of like, all right, well, uh, do I make this bad decision, or do I stand on principle or what I really really believe core, and buck the team that I've been taught since the academy to go forward with something that I know is right. Um, that's difficult. That is very very difficult, and I see it far too often, especially in some of the younger officers, as Jorge was saying. Um, and you got to just try to get them to the point where, hey, look, yeah, we are a team. Yeah, we don't fight in the sense of fight crime as individuals, but we when you see something that's egregious, when you see something that's gone astray, when you see something um, that has poor implications not only for yourself but the department, the profession, going wrong, hey man, you need to say something, because that could be your mother, that could be your father, that could be your brother, your sister, or someone else's mother, brother, father, sister. Right? It doesn't really matter if it's yours. It should matter whether it's somebody's. But we haven't, as a whole, I don't think we have gotten there yet. We've got so far to go, as a
Very.
profession to get there, and to acknowledge that, hey, look, we made some missteps, and huge ones, right? Floyd is no minor thing. I mean, and we could go on. I'm sorry, I don't want to monopolize the conversation, but I'm gonna go ahead and stop. Right. Yeah.
Okay, so in that frame of thinking, I read somewhere today that one of the officers who was involved in the Floyd killing had not even been on the job for a week, and that the officer that had his knee on George Floyd was his training officer. So, in light of that reality, how much of the system can we trust? Should we trust the system? If the system develops these kinds of features, and I realize it's probably a little bit myopic because with regard to the whole of the police system, criminal justice in general. But if the system produces teachers like him, should we trust the system? And if we shouldn't, what remedies do you all recommend from a cultural perspective that has to be employed?
Hmm.
I know
Hey,
that's
hey,
a quick question.
So I think there are fundamental flaws. I mean, like many black people think, I think that there are fundamental flaws in the criminal justice system. But let me expand that for just a second. That's not just police, right? Do I think the vast majority of police are getting it right out there? I think so. There's far too many that we've seen in the past few years, and more recently in the past few months, that have gotten it wrong. Um, but the system as a whole, and we can go through from slavery to Jim Crow to poll taxing, and and the lot on how police have been used as tools of oppression throughout America, right? Um, so so I think that's beyond argument at this point, right? That they've been used as tools, or and even in some cases infiltrated by people who are prejudiced, white supremacists throughout the years. I think we can all agree on that. Um, the greater picture though is about the system as a whole. How does the criminal justice system handle a young black boy versus a young white person who may do very similar offenses, may have very similar offenses, but be treated very differently? I think one of the reasons why police get all of the blame and all of the stuff dumped onto their plate is because we're open 24 hours a day, right? You don't have that much interaction with prosecutors' offices. You don't have that much interaction with judges to see the other side of these policy meetings that go on, that structure where police are deployed, how police the tactics are put together, right? We don't see those sides of it, and the reality is that those are just as important as the guys and the men and women that go out and actually enforce these policies. And so, in my view, I think there's work to be done in law enforcement, but there's a heck of a lot of work also to be done. And this is not a whataboutism. I'm not trying to deflect at all, but I don't want this to get lost because I hear this a lot. Like, oh, police are like, yeah, we do. I'm acknowledging that, and let's come up with some common sense solutions to be better. But let's not forget these other jokers, because if you really want it done, right, you got to make sure you get these jokers on board, because the state's attorneys, who sit down at command staff meetings with some of these commanders that say, hey, look, I want enforcement in this area, in this area, in this area, right? And literally have integration with a lot of police departments, right? That they're not off the hook, because again, these are the policymakers, right? And so as a community, we got to make sure that we're putting in office the right people to make these decisions, to make sure that the right policies are enacted in our police departments, right? We got to hold these people accountable to make sure that they're doing right for us. So in summation, right, do I have faith in it? Um, to a degree. Um, I think everything is is to a point. I think we all can get to a point where we certainly can do better. Police have quite a bit of work to do. I think if we build up trust within the community, I think if we have more interaction, more engagement, we have that equity when things go wrong to help us get through certain situations, right? To be able to ride out, hey, look, this was actually a bad apple. This police department does this, and this. I know these guys. I interact with these police officers on a daily basis, so I know that as a whole, these guys are good, right? They're of the community, they're for the community, so on and so forth. These guys are good for us. But this one guy must have slipped through the cracks. Not okay, not acceptable, but unfortunately it does happen.
Go ahead,
Yeah, I want to add to that just like Jermaine said, as far as the community, it's like the question is, can you trust the system? As far as the Black community is concerned, we're not as involved with the justice system as we should be. If anything, there's this feel to stand against as opposed to infiltrate, be a part, and actually be a part of the changes.
Mm-hmm.
Because like in the law enforcement community, we talk about how you go to certain communities and you have people who will tell you everything you need to know, which makes a great deal of difference as far as once it gets out of our hands and goes into the state's attorneys and all the other entities of law. It makes a great deal of difference because now you have somebody who you have a witness, you have testimony and so forth. Versus in our communities that we don't do that as much because there's this whole no telling, no snitching, and I think it takes, to answer your question, we need the community in order to actually answer that question with a solid answer. The community has to be a part of that change, has to be a part of that change. And I understand the dangers of it, but it has to start somewhere. And we won't be able to do much about the danger if we're not a part of it. I mean, you have to let us know what's going on to actually protect you. Um, and I also want to say that there are more, and this is just as far as police, there are more good police, more good cops than there is bad. There is
Certainly.
more good cops than there is bad. And I wanna throw in there that good cops hate bad cops, dislike bad cops more than any protester could ever say, more than any civilian could ever. If we see a cop that is bad, we know he's dirty, cruddy, all the words that you want to use, and we steer clear. We want to do something. We don't like that person. Now, here's where the problem lies is that sometimes things are not done about that. Case point. I ain't gonna name no names, but it's like I think you know where I was going with that.
Oh,
Uh,
buddy.
a certain group was doing certain things, and people turned a blind eye to it. It's like they there was just no way that that group was doing everything 100% properly. But it's like nothing was done, nothing was said. They were bringing in results, and it was allowed. And then lo and behold, now they're behind bars.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're behind bars,
So,
and it's because yeah. Go ahead.
so I, I don't know if this is pushback, but I guess let me speak.
Sound like some pushback coming. Sound like some pushback coming.
Yeah,
Probably.
yeah.
Um, Pushback. I mean, I know you guys can't answer specifically, but so in that vein, right? If good cops despise bad cops, if there are more good cops than there are bad cops, how do we have situations like we have in Minneapolis, where the cop was? Well, I mean, he's like an 18-year vet. He's got a crazy amount of complaints, and more than that,
18.
just on a basic humanistic level, right?
Mm.
You may not have dropped the N word and told everybody that you were going to a Klan rally or anything like super crazy, overtly racist during that time. You may have been able to, that may not be your thing, or if it was, you just may not have revealed it. But I find it hard to believe that someone could have that level of carelessness for a black life, that level of just general, I don't really care, right? Like, because I think the most sharp thing about the video is the ease in which he kills the guy. You can't have that level of overall lack of care for life and the life of a human being without some of that spilling out to somebody at some point in time over the course of his entire career. Like, I find it hard to believe
Mhm.
that nobody knew that this guy, at a minimum, right? Like, at a minimum, just didn't really care if somebody died at his hands. And if you take that, if you take race even out of that, that's reckless, that's careless, that's negligent, right? Like, those are things that should be stomped out, not by just his peers, but also by subordinates, and the rest of the folks in the system. Like, it seems laughable that that can happen, and no one is aware, no one knows like that this guy is that bad apple. I, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess that's just my pushback. I don't know that there's an accurate response to that because you guys aren't in that department. But I mean, there's something amiss in either the culture, there's something amiss in the system, and I think also one of the craziest things is that this is right next door to Philando Castillo. Like, it's not like they didn't get the full gamut of like, hey, look, we got to be on our P's and Q's. Like, how does this happen? How is this officer this way and nobody sees it? Like, that doesn't really seem to add up.
You want to get that?
Yeah. As far as the complaint, as far as the complaints, there were complaints. Rather, I'm not sure if they came from the people that he interacted with or if it came from law enforcement complaining on him. But that's the thing. The whatever invest. That's why I was about to tell him myself. But
Mm.
that's why now there's certain departments that have other entities that investigate that does investigation. I don't know about them. I don't know about them, but it's like a different value. It's not a different value, but a different what's the word I'm looking? Perspective is needed uh, to investigate certain things. But when police is investigating police, I personally don't agree with that. I do not agree with that. Police investigating police. Uh,
Is it
I've had
because of
people who came
accountability?
with me. Yeah, yes,
Mm.
and I've had people who came with me. They left with me from the academy, and then a short amount of time later, now you're investigating police, which doesn't make no sense to me. You don't even have the time on to be doing what you're doing, but that's to answer your question, to that's why those kind of things do fall through the cracks. And it is what it is. That's why those kind of things
So,
do fall through the cracks. They're not properly investigated, and then when that
so
person
let me
gets, yeah, go ahead.
So, okay. So, on a human being level, whose responsibility is that, right? Like, is this, if there is racism among the ranks, is that the responsibility of black officers to see it, report it, to make sure that it doesn't happen? Is that the responsibility of those in management? Like, essentially just assessing, okay, there is a problem, but not being able to point to who is going to be responsible for taking care of said problem does not lead to us fixing the problem, right? It's akin
Right.
to acknowledging someone broke the window. Okay, that's cool. Who's
Good.
going to fix the window? Because if no one fixes the window, we can all agree that the window is broken, but we will still have a hole in our window until somebody decides that this is the person who's responsible for fixing it. Like, I mean, and do you guys feel that sense of responsibility? Like, do you feel like, hey, this is part of that other duties as assigned, that's on the bottom of every job description, that I'm supposed to make sure that if I see racism, I snuff it out. I mean, like, where's that level of responsibility?
And that's the thing. That's when it becomes an individual thing. Because I have personally, in my entire tenure, have never experienced or seen anything racism from any of my peers or counterparts because they know better. They know better than to talk like that or to react like that or to do anything like that in front of me. They know better. Now, but when they're amongst other people who are like them, things become different. But then we're no longer there. That's the thing. People there's a cloaking thing that actually does happen where we can see some things and we can't see some things. But if it does, but to answer your question, yes, I would definitely snuff that. I would definitely point it out. I would definitely call it out. Absolutely.
So so I'm gonna take a little different approach. And don't everybody throw spears or arrows because I got a different opinion. But um, I I think it's a responsibility of all stakeholders, and not just the officers who work with said person, not just leadership, but the community as well, and the voter doesn't get let off the hook either. Okay, because if you don't vote for said mayor, county executive, or whoever runs said the police department, right? Who brings in said police chief, who establishes police leadership to run said police department, then yes, you play a role in this too, right? And so we would be remiss if we thought that, hey, look, yeah, you don't have a role to play in this. Now, to a degree that the line officer or IAU, I mean internal affairs has, maybe not, because on a daily basis we gotta check some stuff. Um, that being said, I think by and large, I will agree with Jorge. I think there are like tons of great cops doing it right every day, and we have to weed out the ones who slipped through the cracks and became a part of this fraternity because of whatever motivating factors that drew them to the profession. Um, it angers me so much when stuff like this happens because literally, I mean, and I think it'll be a little different now. But like we got to get on like this heightened alert all the time, right? So I'm walking in my house, there was a story about a federal officer who got shot in the back of the head. I think he was coming out of his house or going into his house or something like that. And so now I got to always, like everywhere I go, I'm telling my wife, hey, look, don't wear any blue line or, police wife shirts or this, that, and the third, because I don't need you bringing any extra attention to us because like that's not okay because we gotta look now for this backlash because this is what the profession has brought to my lap. And so that's always a challenge when stuff like this happens. Um, to your greater point, I think I do believe that there should be some accountability, and here's the different part with Jorge. I do think that you need to at least have done this job to investigate these to investigate police, right? So maybe you say that, all right, well, it can't be somebody that's um, police now. Maybe they were retired police, right? I just don't see how many. I gave Twy and I were talking about this the other day. I gave the analogy. You don't see non-doctors necessarily evaluating doctors on how they do surgery, right? And so I think it's difficult if you haven't done this job to know all the stressors, all the pitfalls, all the things to look for and evaluating, hey, well, did he handle this situation right? To come in and say, hey, look, this complaint is sustained. you're suspended or you're fired, blah 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 blah. And I'm like, well, this is how we train, right? This is how we handle certain things, and I mean, like I think it's difficult if you haven't been a part or if you haven't done it to just go
Mm.
and evaluate someone who has. I'm not saying that you can't. I'm just saying it's difficult.
Okay, so with that being said, because we don't have a lot of time, we probably have about maybe another 7 to 8 minutes. Um, you all kind of stepped into one of the questions that I wanted to ask, which was some of the remedies that we need to employ in order to help bridge the gap between the perception of law enforcement, especially with regard to Black people. But to go beyond that, I mean, and Jermaine, you talked about voting, who we put into the office, who runs your county executives, your mayors, those people who actually hire the sheriff and the police captains and police chiefs, things of that nature. And I think those things are very important. That's one side of the equation. On the other side of the equation, what do we say to especially young Black men to give them insight on how to handle interactions with law enforcement? I've had conversations with my son. He doesn't drive you, but I've had those conversations where you don't talk back to police officers. We've watched TV shows and had discussions. You don't turn your back on cops. You don't run things of that nature. Um, what do you recommend as police officers, as Black police officers, um, to other young Black men, or just young Black men, yes, but Black men in general? How do you all? What do you recommend we do? And try to take maybe 2 to 3 minutes apiece, because of the sake of time. What do you recommend? How do we interact to leave every interaction with both parties alive? Go ahead,
Yeah.
you can start.
So
Uh,
what the one thing? I'm sorry. Did you say my bad?
No, go ahead,
Good.
Jermaine.
The one thing that I think we can do right now, right, is that most departments, and many people don't know this, but most departments have a system set up where you can go right along with the cop for a shift. Most people don't know that, right? And so once you start to see the mindset of how police do what they do, right, that will give you a ton of insight into how to act, how to engage on certain calls, doing traffic stops, to keep you safe. It also, right, I know my department, I don't think we have like a policy where there's a limit on it, right? Go on as many as you can. What does that do?
yep.
That now allows me to know the officers in my district, in my precinct, right? And so if they know me and they know I'm not about foolishness, right? That, hey, look, if ever they did see me out on the street, and he's like, oh, hey, there's Jermaine. Hey man, what you doing over here? Oh, I'm just walking to the store. Oh, okay, he's a good kid, right? That's kind of what we do sometimes in the back of our minds, anyway, subconsciously, right? As people. So I think that would be a great start to do off the break, to help bridge that communication gap.
I agree wholeheartedly. When you said ride-alongs, that is that's a great tool. That is a great tool. Knowledge is power, and a lot of times, a lot of the civilians that goes on ride-alongs with us is college students who are doing something for a paper. You seldomly ever like just have somebody from the neighborhood, hey, I want to go on a ride along. You don't get that. Another way is it's engaged, and this departments have this thing where we have community engagement where we have to, well, they're enforcing what should have been already been a factor of getting out of your vehicles and engaging with the community. They call it community engagement. Um, Engage the officers, especially where I work. I get out the car and people scatter. People scatter as opposed to embracing, like, hey, what can I do? What should I do? What if? There's only I've only had that but a handful of times where people ask questions. Utilize us. We are here for that. Utilize us. Ask questions. Ride-alongs. Educate yourself. Um, Also, there was something that I was thinking about. Social media. There was this. I can't remember this brother's page. It was a TikTok. I can't remember what it was. Anyway, he had. It was a skit with him and himself. He was an officer. He was in his uniform, and then it was him as a civilian protesting. And the content of it, well, the context of it was, why are you on that side of the line? You should be over here protesting with us. And then he's like, and then it comes back to himself in uniform. He's like, I want to be over there, but I have a job to do. I feel the same way you feel. I'm also a black man. Uh, a lot of people don't, I don't know. We get judged based on the wrong actions of one. And so I say just engage, 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 engage. I'm all about engaging and just educate yourself. Like, utilize it.
Very good. Twy, any closing words? Because I know we don't have a whole bunch of more time, but anything you want to add to that? This has been a really good discussion, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the engagement piece is an interesting concept. One of the things that I know from my own experience is that, like, when I get pulled over by a cop, like, I have this like anxiety in my heart. I don't, that I think that's systemic. Um, that as a black man, I'm at a super heightened alert. Yet when I see the police officer at the grocery store, right? Because in the midst of COVID, there's police officers at seemingly every grocery store. I don't feel that same way. I don't know what that's about, but I don't feel somehow endangered in the scenario where I go to the grocery store. And I don't know, maybe it is that the fact that we can engage. I see you face to face. I can give you a head nod, whatever. I don't know what it is, but that is an interesting concept because I mean, definitely, if I get pulled over, yeah, my hands up, and officer, my stuff is over here. Yeah, it's all types of anxiety as a black man being pulled over in a car. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I hope that we can find some way. I mean, I'm not of the mind that like we should not have police. Period. Like I know that there's a thought of that out there. Like I'm not of that mind, but yeah, we can't continue with the kind of the status quo. That doesn't work. Um,
Agree.
Particularly for black men, doesn't work at all.
I agree. I agree 100%. We are in a very, very precarious situation. I think in those interactions, and I'm going to close, but in those interactions where you do meet police officers in kind of a more benign setting, I think you can, to a large degree, see them as a peer. And I think that takes away that fear factor. For instance, because I interact with Jorge on a regular basis, I don't instinctively consider him a threat to my well-being, but I know who he is, and so I think that engagement does play a large part in how we perceive police officers, and we do have to be honest and say not all police officers are bad. There are some amazing police officers on the force. The bad ones get the press, and I think that also plays a role in how police officers are perceived globally. But also, in that same regard, we have to make sure that we're doing what we can to make sure that we're addressing the systemic issues that help us from seeing our law enforcement agents as people who are upstanding with righteous intent. Jermaine, Jorge, thank you all so much for joining us today. Your perspective, your insight, I think, is necessary for our community to begin to heal, but also to see that there are commonalities that we all have with regard to how we interact in our communities, how you all view the things that we view. Your lens is very, very similar to our own. And that was very refreshing. And it definitely gave me a greater sense of peace to know that there are police officers who view the illegalities of the acts of some, and you see it as something that is illegal and that needs to be right. So thank you all for your time, for your input, for your candor. It makes a difference. I pray God's protection and his blessings on you and your families. And I believe that when all is said and done, if we pursue righteousness as we should, I believe that that will be the net result, that righteousness will begin to be exuded on both sides. Those people who are protesting will do it in a righteous manner. The police officers who are protecting us, they'll operate with righteous intent. And when all of the protests do come to an end, that we'll all walk together with a very, very clear understanding of how each other feels, and hopefully that'll bring some level of resolution to some of the ills that our society is dealing with. Thank you all so much for joining in. We appreciate you all spending some time hearing our hearts, the issues that really plague the lives of Black people and Black men around this country. We are grateful for it. Thank you again for joining in. Listen, as always, we ask that you would partner with our ministry, that you would sow into it. I believe that something amazing is happening here at the TAB, and your resources, your giving, your benevolence really enables us to do what God has called us to do in this time and in this age. Thank you so much. God bless you. We'll see y'all on the other side. Y'all take care.